The morning mist clings to Millbrook's cobblestone streets like a shroud. The year is 1847, and desperation hangs heavier than the fog rolling off the nearby hills. Market day has always been sacred here, a time when farmers, merchants, and townsfolk gathered to trade, gossip, and maintain the delicate threads that hold this small community together. But today will be different. Today, the price of bread will ignite something far more sinister than anyone could imagine. Sarah Mitchell adjusts her worn shawl and counts the meager coins in her palm for the third time. 3 children wait at home, their hollow eyes a constant reminder of how little she has left. The Turner gang controls the grain supply now, and their prices climb higher each week like vultures circling carrion. 16 pence for a loaf, she whispers to herself, shaking her head. Highway robbery. The market square buzzes with similar conversations. Frustrated murmurs drift between the wooden stalls as vendors hawk their wares to increasingly desperate customers. Old Henrik the baker wipes sweat from his brow. Despite the morning chill, he knows what's coming, can feel it in the tension that crackles through the air like electricity before a storm. Thomas Turner stands at the far end of the square, his massive frame casting a shadow that seems to swallow everything around him. His brothers flank him, Marcus with his perpetual sneer, and young Billy, whose eyes hold the cold gleam of someone who's tasted violence and found he likes it. They're not here to shop, they're here to collect. Prices go up again today, Thomas announces to no one in particular, but his voice carries across the square like a death knell. Wheat's getting scarce. Supply and demand, folks. Simple economics. Margaret O'Brien clutches her husband's arm tighter. Patrick's face reddens as he watches their neighbor's shoulders sag under the weight of Thomas's words. These are good people, farmers who've worked this land for generations, merchants who've built honest businesses, one transaction at a time. They don't deserve this. 16 pence was already too much. Patrick calls out, his Irish accent thickening with emotion. You're asking people to choose between bread and everything else. Thomas turns slowly, like a predator who's just noticed movement in his peripheral vision. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. Then maybe they should work harder, Patrick, or find themselves new circumstances. The crowd shifts uneasily. Everyone knows the Turner gang's reputation extends far beyond simple price gouging. There are whispers of intimidation, of businesses mysteriously burning down when owners refuse to cooperate, of people who speak out too loudly finding themselves facing unexpected troubles. Young Emily Watson tugs at her mother's skirt. At 7 years old, she doesn't understand the politics of grain prices, but she recognizes fear in the adult faces around her. Her mother, Catherine, tries to shield her from the growing tension, but there's nowhere to hide in the open square. We need that bread, Mama, Emily whispers. Catherine's heart breaks a little more. They do need it, desperately, but at these prices, she'll have to sacrifice something else essential, just to feed her daughter for another day. Father O'Malley emerges from the crowd, his black robes marking him as distinctly as a beacon. The elderly priest has served this community for 30 years, through good harvests and bad, through births and deaths, and everything in between. He's seen greed before, but nothing quite like this. Thomas, he says quietly, approaching the gang leader with the measured steps of someone who's faced down plenty of bullies in his time. These people are struggling. Perhaps we could find a more Christian solution to this situation. Billy Turner laughs, a harsh sound that makes several children instinctively move closer to their parents. Christianity don't put food on our table, priest. Market forces do. Market forces. Father O'Malley repeats the words like he's tasting something bitter. Is that what we're calling extortion now? The temperature in the square seems to drop 10 degrees. Thomas's hand moves almost imperceptibly toward the axe hanging from his belt, a tool of his trade as a woodsman. But everyone knows it serves other purposes when necessary. Careful, Father, Thomas says softly. Wouldn't want Sunday service. To be short, a priest. Hey everyone. We're just getting started with this incredible, true story that shocked a small town in 1847. If you're already hooked and want to see how this explosive situation unfolds, smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think the townspeople should do. Should they stand up to the Turner gang or try to find another solution? Your engagement keeps these stories coming. The standoff stretches like a taut wire, ready to snap. Sarah Mitchell finds herself moving forward without conscious thought, her maternal instincts overriding her survival instincts. 3 hungry children will do that to a mother. I'll take 2 loaves, she says, her voice steadier than she feels. But I can only pay 12 pence each. That's all I have. Thomas's attention shifts to her like a searchlight, finding its target. That's not how this works. Sarah, price is 16 pence. Take it or leave it. Then, I leave it, she replies, surprised by her own courage. And so should everyone else. A murmur runs through the crowd, part admiration, part terror. Sarah has just drawn a line in the sand. And everyone knows the Turner gang doesn't respond well to lines. Marcus Turner steps forward, his hand already on his axe handle. Maybe you didn't hear my brother clearly enough. Sarah, let me help with your hearing. I heard him fine. Sarah's voice grows stronger, fed by the desperate love of a mother who's watched her children grow thinner each week. What I heard was a man who's forgotten that we're all neighbors here. We're supposed to help each other, not bleed each other dry. More heads nod in the crowd. The baker, Henrik, finds his voice. Sarah's right. These prices are impossible. We can't keep paying them. Then don't, Thomas says with that predatory smile. See how long your children stay fed without bread. But something has shifted in the crowd's dynamics. Sarah's courage is spreading like wildfire, and the Turner gang can sense it. Billy's hand moves to his axe, following his brother's lead. The morning that started with simple commerce is rapidly turning into something far more dangerous. Old Gustav, the blacksmith, speaks up, his gravelly voice carrying the authority of someone who's never backed down from a fight. Used to be, a man could make an honest living in this town. Now we've got parasites sucking us dry. Parasites, Billy snarls, pulling his axe free with a metallic whisper that makes everyone flinch. Want to say that again, old man? Gustav doesn't flinch. At 72, he's seen too much to be intimidated by punks with axes, parasites, leeches. Call yourselves whatever you like. You're still bleeding this town white. The crowd holds its collective breath. Lines have been crossed, and everyone knows there's no going back now. The Turner gang built their reputation on swift, brutal responses to defiance. They can't afford to look weak, especially not in front of the entire town. Thomas raises his axe slightly, not quite a threat, but close enough to send the message. Gustav, you've been around long enough to know better than to run your mouth like that. I've been around long enough to remember when men settled their differences with words, not weapons, Gustav replies evenly. But if you want to do this the hard way, ... He reaches for the heavy hammer hanging from his belt, his tool of trade. But like the Turners' axes, it serves multiple purposes when needed. Father O'Malley steps between them, his arms spread wide. Gentlemen, please. This is market day, not a battlefield. Surely we can resolve this without violence. Violence, Thomas laughs, but there's no humor in it. Father, violence is what happens to communities that forget their place in the natural order. We provide grain. You pay our prices. Simple as that. And what happens when people can't pay your prices? Catherine Watson asks, still holding Emily close. What happens when families start starving because bread costs more than they can earn? Then maybe they should have made better choices in life. Marcus sneers. Not our problem if people can't afford to live. The callousness of the statement hits the crowd like a physical blow. These aren't faceless statistics they're discussing. These are neighbors, friends, family members, people who've shared meals and celebrated holidays together, who've helped each other through hard times for generations. Young Emily looks up at her mother with wide, confused eyes. Mama, why are they being mean? Catherine's throat constricts. How do you explain greed to a 7-year-old? How do you make sense of cruelty wrapped in economic theory? Sometimes, sweetheart, she says carefully, people forget that money isn't more important than other people. I didn't forget anything, Thomas says, having overheard. I just learned what you all refuse to understand. The strong survive, and the weak serve. That's nature. That's how the world really works. Patrick O'Brien's face grows redder. That's not nature, you twisted bastard. That's just evil dressed up in fancy words. The insult hangs in the air like smoke from a cannon blast. Everyone knows what happens next. The Turner gang doesn't tolerate disrespect. Especially not public disrespect that undermines their carefully cultivated reputation for untouchability. Billy moves first, his axe singing through the air. Patrick's head. But Patrick isn't some helpless victim. He's a former soldier who fought in the border wars, and his reflexes haven't dulled with age. He ducks, rolls, and comes up swinging his walking stick like a club. The wooden stick connects with Billy's wrist with a crack that echoes through the square. Billy's axe goes flying, clattering across the cobblestones, as he howls in pain and rage. You broke my bloody wrist. Billy screams, clutching his injured limb. Should have thought of that before you swung at me, boy. Patrick replies grimly. But now Thomas and Marcus are moving, their axes gleaming in the morning sun. The crowd scatters like startled birds, parents grabbing children and running for cover, but there's nowhere to go. The market square is surrounded by buildings, and the Turner gang is positioned to cut off the main exits. Sarah finds herself backing toward Henrik's bread stall, her heart hammering against her ribs. This is escalating, far beyond anything she imagined when she first spoke up. But she can't bring herself to regret it, not when her children's future hangs in the balance. Gustav, the blacksmith, doesn't run. Neither does Father O'Malley. They plant themselves between the Turner gang and the fleeing townspeople, creating a human barrier that's both brave and foolish. This ends here, Thomas Gustav says, his hammer held ready. We're not your serfs, and this isn't your kingdom. Actually, Thomas replies, advancing with deliberate menace, I think you'll find it is. His axe comes down in a vicious arc, aimed at Gustav's skull. The old blacksmith gets his hammer up just in time, metal ringing against metal in a shower of sparks. But Gustav is 72 years old, and Thomas is in his prime. The impact sends shockwaves up Gustav's arms, nearly knocking him off balance. Marcus circles around, trying to get behind the blacksmith, while Father O'Malley shouts desperately for calm. The priest's words might as well be whispers in a hurricane. The time for peaceful resolution has passed. Thomas presses his attack, raining blows down on Gustav's increasingly desperate defense. Each impact weakens the old man's guard, and everyone watching knows he can't hold out much longer. That's when Henrik the baker does something that surprises everyone, including himself. He grabs a heavy rolling pin from his stall and charges at Marcus Turner from behind, bringing it down on the gang member's head with all the fury of a man who's watched his neighbors suffer for too long. Marcus stumbles forward, blood streaming from his scalp, but he doesn't go down. Instead, he spins around with his axe raised, murder in his eyes. Big mistake, Baker, he snarls. Henrik raises the rolling pin again, but he's not a fighter. He's a gentle man whose worst violence usually involves kneading dough too aggressively. Marcus's axe bites deep into Henrik's shoulder, and the baker's scream cuts through the chaos like a knife. Blood spatters across the bread display as Henrik falls backward into his stall, sending loaves flying in all directions. The irony isn't lost on anyone. Bread, the cause of all this conflict, now scattered and trampled underfoot like so much refuse. Sarah watches in horror as Henrik writhes in pain, his white apron rapidly turning red. This is her fault. If she hadn't spoken up, if she'd just paid the inflated prices like everyone else. But then she sees Marcus raising his axe again, preparing to finish what he started, and something snaps inside her. Her children's faces flash before her eyes. Not just hungry, but orphaned. If the Turner gang gets away with this massacre, she lunges forward and grabs one of Henrik's heavy mixing bowls, hurling it at Marcus's head with desperate accuracy. The ceramic connects with a satisfying crack, and Marcus staggers backward, momentarily stunned. Run! Sarah screams to anyone still in the square. Get help. Get the constable. But the nearest constable is in the county seat, a full day's ride away. By the time help arrives, whatever's going to happen will be long over. Thomas has finally broken through Gustav's weakening defense, his axe finding its mark in the blacksmith's thigh. Gustav goes down hard, his hammer clattering away as he tries desperately to stem the flow of blood with his hands. This is what defiance gets you. Thomas roars, raising his axe high above Gustav's prone form. Anyone else want to test the natural order? Father O'Malley throws himself across Gustav's body, his arms spread wide. Thomas, in the name of all that's holy, stop this madness. Move, priest, or join him. I won't move, Father O'Malley says quietly. If you want to murder this good man, you'll have to murder me first. For a moment, Thomas hesitates. Killing townspeople is one thing. They can be dismissed as rebels, troublemakers who brought their fate upon themselves. But killing a priest, that carries implications that even the Turner gang might not be able to weather. The hesitation saves Gustav's life, but dooms others. While Thomas wrestles with the political calculations of priest murder, Billy has recovered enough to rejoin the fight with his left hand. His broken right wrist hangs useless. But rage makes a powerful substitute for ambidexterity. He spots Patrick O'Brien, helping Catherine Watson and her daughter toward one of the side alleys, and charges after them with a wordless roar. Patrick pushes Catherine and Emily behind him, raising his walking stick again. But Billy's fury makes him reckless and unpredictable. The axe catches Patrick across the ribs, opening a gash that sprays blood across the cobblestones. Patrick stumbles but doesn't fall. Years of hard labor have given him a constitution that doesn't yield easily to pain. "Take Emily and run," he gasps to Catherine. Catherine grabs her daughter's hand and flees toward the alley. But Emily's 7-year-old legs can't match her mother's desperate pace. She stumbles, falls, scrapes her knee on the rough stones. Billy sees his chance and raises the axe above the fallen child. This is getting intense. The Turner Gang's reign of terror is just beginning, and the body count is about to skyrocket. If you're on the edge of your seat wondering who survives this massacre, make sure you're subscribed, because the next part will blow your mind. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think little Emily makes it out alive? Your theories keep this story alive. Catherine's scream cuts through the morning air like breaking glass. She throws herself backward, covering Emily's small body with her own, just as Billy's axe begins its descent. The blade meant for a child instead finds a mother's back, splitting flesh and muscle with a wet sound that will haunt the survivors' dreams for years to come. Catherine's blood spatters across Emily's face as her mother's body goes limp above her. The 7-year-old girl doesn't understand what's happening. One moment her mother was protecting her, and now there's warmth and wetness, and a terrible stillness. "Mama," Emily whispers, her small hands pushing at Catherine's unresponsive form. "Mama, get up. We have to run." Billy stands over them, breathing hard, his axe dripping. Something flickers across his face. A moment of recognition, perhaps even regret, as he looks down at what he's done. He's just murdered a woman for trying to protect her child. But the moment passes quickly, pushed aside by the adrenaline and mob mentality that's taken hold of the square. The Turner Gang crossed a line when they started this fight, and now there's no going back. They have to finish what they started, or face the consequences of leaving witnesses to their brutality. Patrick O'Brien sees Catherine fall and roars with a sound that's barely human. Despite his own injuries, he charges at Billy with his walking stick raised like a spear. The impact drives Billy backward, and both men go down in a tangle of limbs and fury. They roll across the cobblestones, each trying to gain advantage over the other. Patrick's military training serves him well, but Billy's younger and has fewer injuries to slow him down. Worst of all, he still has his axe, while Patrick only has his walking stick and his rage. The axe finds Patrick's stomach, sliding between ribs to puncture vital organs. Patrick's eyes widen in shock as he looks down at the wooden handle protruding from his torso. Blood bubbles up from his throat as he tries to speak, probably trying to tell Emily to run, but the words won't come. Billy pushes the dying man aside and turns back toward Emily, who's still trapped under her mother's body and covered in blood. The sight of him approaching snaps something in the child's mind. She begins to scream with a sound that's pure terror distilled into acoustic form. Her screams galvanize the remaining townspeople. Whatever paralysis had frozen them during the initial violence breaks under the sound of a child's mortal fear. Gustav, despite his leg wound, starts crawling toward his hammer. Sarah Mitchell grabs a heavy bread paddle from Henrik's overturned stall. Even Father O'Malley abandons his pacifist principles and picks up a cobblestone. "Leave her alone," Sarah screams, swinging the paddle at Billy's head. The wooden implement connects with his skull with a hollow thunk, but Billy's adrenaline keeps him upright. He spins toward Sarah with murder in his eyes, his axe whistling through the air. To her neck. Sarah ducks, feeling the blade pass so close to her head that it clips strands of her hair. She stumbles backward, trips over a scattered loaf of bread, and falls hard on her back. Billy advances on her, raising the axe again. That's when Gustav's hammer, thrown with the last of the blacksmith's strength, catches Billy in the temple. The young Turner brother drops like a stone, his axe clattering away as blood pools beneath his head. For a moment, there's relative quiet in the square. Billy lies motionless. Patrick and Catherine are clearly dead. Henrik clutches his wounded shoulder and moans softly. Gustav applies pressure to his leg wound, while Father O'Malley tends to other injured townspeople. But Thomas and Marcus are still standing, still armed, still dangerous. And now they're looking at their fallen brother with expressions that promise even greater violence to come. "Billy," Marcus calls out, moving toward his brother's still form. When he gets close enough to see the extent of the head injury, his face contorts with rage. "Billy," he kneels beside his younger brother, checking for a pulse, for breathing, for any sign of life. Finding none, he looks up at Gustav with hatred that's almost radioactive in its intensity. "You killed him," Marcus says quietly. "He was trying to murder a child." Gustav replies through gritted teeth. What choice did I have? You had the choice to mind your own business, Thomas says, moving to flank Gustav from the other side. You had the choice to pay our prices and keep your mouth shut. Instead, you chose war. We didn't choose anything, Sarah says, getting back to her feet despite her shaking legs. You brought war to us. We just refused to die quietly. Thomas considers this for a moment, his head tilted like a predator studying prey. Fair enough. But if it's war you want, it's war you'll get. He raises his axe and brings it down toward Gustav's head. The old blacksmith tries to roll away, but his wounded leg won't support him properly. The blade catches him across the shoulder, opening another gaping wound. Gustav screams and tries to crawl away, leaving a trail of blood behind him. Thomas follows methodically, like a cat playing with a wounded mouse. This is what happens, Thomas announces to the remaining townspeople. When you forget your place. He raises the axe again, but Father O'Malley interposes himself once more. Thomas, please. He's hurt. He's no threat to you now. He killed my brother. Your brother was about to murder a child. Gustav saved an innocent life. My brother was family, Thomas snarls. That girl is nothing to me. He pushes the priest aside with enough force to send the elderly man sprawling, then turns back to Gustav. But the brief delay has given the blacksmith time to inch closer to his hammer. And when Thomas's axe comes down, Gustav manages to get the tool's handle up to block it. The impact sends shockwaves through both men's arms. But Gustav is fighting for his life, while Thomas is fighting for revenge. Different kinds of motivation that favor the desperate over the angry. Gustav manages to land a glancing blow with his hammer against Thomas's knee, causing the gang leader to stumble backward. It's not enough to disable him, but it gives Gustav a few precious seconds to try to get back on his feet. Meanwhile, Marcus has turned his attention to the other survivors. He spots Sarah trying to help little Emily out from under her mother's body, and starts toward them with his axe raised. No more witnesses, he mutters. Sarah looks up to see death, approaching in the form of a blood-splattered man, with wild eyes, and a weapon that's already tasted too much violence today. She positions herself between Marcus and Emily, knowing she can't fight him, but unwilling to abandon the child. She's just a little girl, Sarah pleads. She can't hurt you. Let her go. She's seen too much. Marcus replies. They all have. That's when Henrik, despite his wounded shoulder, manages to get back on his feet and grab a heavy cast-iron pot from his stall. The baker might not be a warrior, but he spent his life working with heavy equipment, and his arms are stronger than they look. The pot connects with Marcus's head with a sound like a church bell. Marcus staggers, drops his axe, and falls to his knees, with blood streaming from his scalp. Henrik raises the pot again, ready to finish the job, but Marcus isn't done yet. He pulls a long knife from his belt and drives it up into Henrik's abdomen, just below the ribs. Henrik's eyes go wide as he looks down at the blade protruding from his body. The pot falls from nerveless fingers as he stumbles backward, his hands trying futilely to stem the flow of blood. Sarah screams, but there's nothing she can do. The baker collapses beside his overturned stall, surrounded by the bread that had started all this violence. Marcus pulls his knife free and wipes it on his pants, then retrieves his axe. He's bleeding from his head wound, but he's still mobile, still dangerous. Now, he says, turning back towards Sarah and Emily. Where were we? Sarah backs away, pulling Emily with her, but they're running out of space. The market square is littered with bodies and debris, and every escape route seems blocked by either buildings or Turner gang members. Thomas has gained the upper hand in his fight with Gustav, landing several more axe blows that have left the old blacksmith barely conscious and losing blood fast. Father O'Malley kneels beside Gustav, trying to provide what comfort he can, but there's nothing left to be done medically. Thomas, the priest says quietly, this has to stop. You've won. Let the survivors go. Thomas looks around the square at the dead and dying, at the blood-soaked cobblestones, at the few terrified townspeople still cowering behind overturned stalls. His brother Billy lies motionless near the fountain, never to trouble anyone again. Thomas laughs bitterly. I've lost my youngest brother. My other brother's half dead from a head wound. My reputation is built on fear, and fear only works if people believe I'm invincible. If word gets out that a handful of bakers and blacksmiths fought the Turner gang and lived to tell about it. He doesn't finish the sentence, but he doesn't need to. Everyone understands the implications. The Turner gang's power comes from their reputation for swift, brutal retaliation against anyone who crosses them. If survivors escape to spread stories of successful resistance, other communities might find the courage to stand up as well. So no one leaves. Thomas concludes. No witnesses, no stories. Just another unfortunate incident that no one can quite explain. Father O'Malley closes his eyes and begins to pray, not for salvation, because he knows that's not coming, but for forgiveness for all the souls about to meet their Maker, guilty and innocent alike. Marcus advances on Sarah and Emily again, his axe gleaming with dried blood from its previous victims. Sarah has nowhere left to retreat. Her back is against the stone wall of the cooper's shop, and Marcus is close enough that she can smell the metallic scent of blood on his clothes. Please, she whispers one last time. She's just a baby. Babies grow up, Marcus replies. Grow up to tell stories. He raises the axe, and Sarah closes her eyes, pulling Emily tight against her chest. If they're going to die, at least the child won't see it coming. The massacre is reaching its bloody climax. But there's still one more twist that will leave you speechless. Don't scroll away now. The next few minutes will determine who lives, who dies, and whether the Turner Gang's reign of terror continues. Smash that like button if this story has you gripped, and let me know in the comments. Can anyone save Sarah and Emily? Or is this the end of the line? Keep watching to find out. The sound that saves their lives comes from an unexpected source. Hoofbeats thundering across cobblestones, approaching fast from the main road. Marcus hesitates, his axe still raised, as he turns toward the sound. A rider bursts into the square at full gallop, his horse lathered with sweat from hard riding. The man in the saddle wears the uniform of the county constabulary, and there's a rifle in his hands that he's already bringing to bear. Drop your weapons, Constable Morrison shouts, his horse dancing sideways as he tries to control the spooked animal while keeping his rifle aimed at the Turner Gang. Drop them now. The constable's arrival transforms the entire dynamic of the situation. Thomas and Marcus are suddenly facing organized law enforcement instead of desperate civilians, and their axes seem inadequate against a rifle in the hands of a trained marksman. But Thomas Turner didn't build his reputation by backing down from authority figures. If anything, the arrival of law enforcement represents an even greater threat than the townspeople. Witnesses can be silenced, but killing a constable brings down the full weight of the Crown's justice system. Constable Morrison, Thomas says with false joviality, lowering his axe slightly but not dropping it. What brings you to our little market day celebration? The smoke, Morrison replies grimly, his rifle never wavering. Could see it from 5 miles out. Looked like half the town was burning. For the first time, the survivors noticed that several of the wooden stalls have caught fire during the fighting, probably from overturned oil, lamps or scattered coals from Henrik's bread ovens. The flames are spreading slowly but steadily, adding an orange glow to the morning mist and filling the air with smoke. Unfortunate accident, Marcus says, blood still streaming from his head wound. These old wooden structures are terrible fire hazards. Morrison's eyes take in the scene. The bodies scattered across the square. The blood-soaked cobblestones. The terrified survivors clutching weapons and wounds. His expression grows darker with each detail. Funny kind of fire that leaves people hacked apart with axes, he observes. Drop your weapons. Last warning. Thomas considers his options. Morrison is one man with one rifle, accurate at range but limited in close quarters. If the Turner brothers can get close enough fast enough, they might be able to overwhelm him before he can reload. The problem is that if they guess wrong, they'll both be dead before they cover half the distance. What's it going to be, Thomas? Morrison asks. Easy way or hard way? The decision is made for Thomas when Gustav, despite his multiple wounds and massive blood loss, manages to grab Thomas's ankle and pull hard enough to make the gang leader stumble. It's not much. The old blacksmith is operating on willpower and rage, rather than physical strength at this point. But it's enough to break Thomas's concentration for a crucial second. Morrison's rifle barks, the sound echoing off the surrounding buildings like thunder. The heavy bullet catches Thomas in the chest, spinning him around and driving him backward into the stone fountain. Blood blooms across his shirt as he slides down the fountain's base, his axe falling from nerveless fingers. Marcus sees his brother go down and makes the worst decision of his life. Instead of surrendering or fleeing, he charges directly at Morrison with his axe raised and a scream of fury tearing from his throat. Morrison's rifle is empty, and there's no time to reload. He drops the weapon and draws his saber, the blade singing as it clears the scabbard. Marcus's axe comes down in a vicious overhead chop that would have split the constable's skull. But Morrison sidesteps at the last second and brings his saber up in a diagonal cut that opens Marcus's throat from ear to ear. Marcus takes 3 more steps, blood fountaining from his severed arteries, before his legs give out and he collapses next to his brothers in the growing pool of their combined blood. Silence falls over the market square like a heavy blanket. The only sounds are the crackling of flames from the burning stalls, the labored breathing of the wounded, and little Emily's quiet sobbing as she finally begins to process what's happened to her mother. Morrison dismounts slowly, keeping his saber ready in case there are other threats he hasn't accounted for. He moves from body to body, checking pulses, confirming that the Turner gang's reign of terror has finally ended. Thomas is still alive, but not for long. The rifle bullet punctured a lung, and pink froth bubbles from his lips with each labored breath. He looks up at Morrison with eyes that hold no remorse, only fury at being bested. This, DOESN, single quotes T, end. Here, Thomas gasps. Others will, take our place. Market, forces. Market forces. Morrison repeats quietly, then spits on, the dying man, go to hell. Thomas, he turns his attention to the survivors. Gustav is in bad shape, but still breathing. Tough as old boot leather, just like everyone always said. Henrik has lost a lot of blood from the knife wound, but he's conscious and trying to sit up against his overturned bread stall. Father O'Malley appears to be uninjured physically, though the trauma of watching his parishioners murdered will leave scars that never heal. He's already moving among the dead, performing last rites, and closing eyes that will never see another sunrise. Sarah Mitchell is wounded, but mobile, still holding Emily close, and whispering reassurances that everything will be all right now. The little girl has stopped crying, but hasn't spoken since watching her mother die. A silence that might last days, weeks, or forever. Morrison holsters his saber and surveys the carnage. In his 20 years as a constable, he's never seen anything quite like this. Border raiders, highwaymen, the occasional domestic dispute turned violent. Those he understood. But this was something different. This was what happened when greed and desperation collided with enough force to shatter a community. How many dead? He asks Father O'Malley. The priest continues his grim work for a moment before answering. Patrick O'Brien, Catherine Watson, Henrik Muller, that's 3 townspeople. All 3 Turner brothers, makes 6 total. Wounded. Gustav's hurt bad, but he'll live if we can get him proper medical attention. Sarah has some cuts and bruises. I think the child is physically unharmed, but, double quotes, he doesn't finish the sentence. They all know that some wounds can't be seen. Morrison nods grimly. I'll send for the doctor and the undertaker. Meanwhile, we need to get these fires under control before they spread to the residential areas. The surviving townspeople begin to organize themselves into fire brigades, passing buckets of water from the public well to douse the burning stalls. It's something to do. A way to channel their shock and horror into productive action. As the flames die down and the smoke begins to clear, the full extent of the morning's violence becomes apparent. The market square looks like a battlefield, blood splattered across cobblestones. Overturned stalls scattered everywhere. Bodies lying where they fell in the desperate fight for survival. But it's more than just physical destruction. The Turner gang's final act of violence has shattered something fundamental about Millbrook. This was a place where neighbors trusted each other, where Market Day was a celebration of community cooperation. That innocence is gone forever, burned away in the heat of axes and blood and screaming. Sarah rocks Emily gently, humming a lullaby her own mother used to sing. The little girl's eyes are open but empty, staring at something no one else can see. The trauma specialist won't be invented for another century, and terms like post-traumatic stress disorder are still decades in the future. Emily will have to heal from this horror, with nothing but time and the love of her remaining family. Gustav finally allows himself to be helped to the doctor's office, leaving a trail of blood behind him, but walking under his own power. The old blacksmith is too tough to die from mere axe wounds, though he'll carry the scars for the rest of his life. More importantly, he'll carry the knowledge that when evil came to his town, he stood up and fought back, even at age 72, even bleeding and outnumbered. Father O'Malley finishes his ministrations to the dead and turns his attention to the living. There will be funerals to plan, families to comfort, a community to help heal from this unprecedented trauma. The work of rebuilding will take years, and some wounds will never fully close. Why? Emily suddenly asks, her first words since the violence began. She's looking up at Sarah with eyes that have seen too much for a 7-year-old. Why did they hurt Mama? Sarah doesn't have a good answer. How do you explain greed to a child? How do you make sense of violence that erupts from something as simple as the price of bread? Some people, Sarah says carefully, forget how to be kind. They get so worried about having enough for themselves that they stop caring about other people. Will they come back? Emily whispers. No, sweetheart, they can't hurt anyone anymore. But even as Sarah says the words, she knows they're not entirely true. The Turner gang is dead, but the conditions that created them, poverty, desperation, the vast gulf between those who have and those who need, those remain unchanged. Other predators will emerge to fill the vacuum. Other schemes will be devised to extract wealth from the powerless. The Market Day Massacre will become legend in Millbrook, a story passed down through generations as both warning and inspiration. Warning about what happens when communities allow predators to gain too much power. Inspiration about what's possible when ordinary people find the courage to stand up against overwhelming odds. Constable Morrison begins the grim work of collecting statements from the survivors, documenting the events that led to the bloodshed. His report will make its way through official channels, contributing to policy discussions about grain distribution and rural law enforcement. Changes will be made, slowly, bureaucratically, but changes nonetheless. The immediate crisis is over, but the work of healing has just begun. Millbrook will rebuild its market square, replace its burned stalls, and find new bakers to provide bread at fair prices. The community will come together to care for Gustav during his recovery, to help Sarah raise her 3 children as a widow, and to provide Emily with the love and support she needs to overcome her trauma. But the innocence is gone forever. Market Day will never again be simply about commerce and community. It will always carry the shadow of that terrible morning when neighbors killed neighbors over the price of bread. When desperation and greed combined to create a horror that no one could have imagined. The Turner gang's reign of terror lasted less than 2 years. But their final act of violence will be remembered for generations, not as a cautionary tale about the dangers of market forces or economic disparity, but as proof that when ordinary people are pushed far enough, they'll find extraordinary courage to fight back. The blood on the cobblestones will fade with time, and whether the scars on the survivors will heal, though they'll never disappear completely. The burned stalls will be rebuilt stronger than before, but the lesson of Millbrook's Market Day horror will endure. That freedom isn't free, that justice sometimes requires violence, and that the price of community is eternal vigilance against those who would exploit it. As the sun climbs higher and the morning mist finally burns away completely, the surviving townspeople begin the long work of putting their lives back together. The Turner gang is dead, their axe is silent forever, but the community they tried to destroy has proven stronger than greed, more enduring than violence, and more powerful than fear. The market square will never be the same, but it will continue to serve its purpose, bringing people together, fostering trade and friendship, and proving that even in the darkest times, human beings can find ways to care for each other. The bread scattered across the bloody cobblestones will be swept away and replaced. Life, somehow, will go on. The E&D. What an incredible journey through one of history's most shocking incidents of community violence. The Turner gang's massacre of innocent townsfolk over bread prices shows us how quickly economic desperation can turn into something far darker. If this story left you speechless, please hit that subscribe button and share this video. Stories like this need to be remembered and shared. Drop a comment and let me know what you think about the townspeople's courage in standing up to the Turner gang. Were they heroes, or did their resistance just make things worse? I read every comment, and your thoughts help shape future stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, where we'll dive into another forgotten chapter of history that will blow your mind.